Welcome to another episode of the Terry and Frank Show. I hope you've been tuning in and joining us for all of these great episodes on the human factors of leadership. Hi, I'm Frank Wander. I'm the founder of People Productive. We're a company that helps organizations get the best out of their people by using the time, talent, and energy of older people most effectively. Tara?
Yes, and I'm Terri Mays. I'm a certified culture engineer with focus on understanding the human side of business to drive value in organizations.
So, as a regular viewer of the human factors of leadership, you realize we've been focusing in on one item in each episode. Many of the things we focused on have been research studies. Today, we're going to bring information from a professor and talk about what he predicted, Anthony Klotz, and it's about the Great Resignation. This is such a hot topic right now. And actually, the Great Resignation was predictable, and it was predicted, and it was also avoidable. And the human factors of leadership that we speak about, these are the keys that would allow you to actually keep your people, have them put down roots and stay. If you're worried about the Great Resignation, you should definitely go see the series Terry and I did on belonging. We went through belonging, how to create it. You want people who have a sense of belonging. But let's get into this, Tara. This was predicted by this professor. And you can actually see that this was avoidable. Here is a Gallup. The Great Resignation is really the Great Discontent. Good article. You can find that online. But, you know, here are people who are answering this question. To what extent are you currently looking for a different job than the one you have now?
Are you sharing, Frank?
Oh, no. Gee, I pulled a Frank.
You pulled a Frank.
I pulled a Frank. I do that all the time. Isn't that funny? Okay. So this is the article I was referring to when I didn't share. The Great Resignation is really the Great Discontent. This is based on research that Gallup does. They do studies of the state of the workplace in America. They've been doing it for a long, long time. They're an engagement company. But in their assessments, they have a question: to what extent are you currently looking for a different job than the one you have now? Employees are looking for a job, looking for opportunities. It was 2019, 46%, March 21, 48%. But here's what's interesting. See these statistics? The percent of the people who are actively disengaged, not engaged, engaged. You're talking some really big numbers here.
Yes.
And what's most interesting is here is the Gallup report from 2013, the State of the American Workplace. 70% of American workers are not engaged or actively disengaged. This has barely budged over the years. I look at this report every year when it comes out. I quickly went back on my files, pulled up an older one. You can see this has been a persistent problem. And, you know, we know with the millennial generation that they have been opting to leave and try to find something more meaningful for their life. And let's talk about this Great Resignation, what it means, what leaders have to do about it. What should they be doing now, Tara?
Yeah. So that number for me was very staggering. I did not know that before reading the article. And it just kind of blew me away that 70% of people in the workplace are actively disengaged. They really are totally disconnected from the company that they work for, and they're actively looking for something else. And we know that when employees are not engaged, they are not innovative, they're not agile, they're not creative in any way. They make more mistakes. Like all of those things can be attributed to disengagement. They start to lose that desire to care about what's happening in the company because they feel like the company has left them behind and they don't care about them as an individual. People really want to
Yeah.
have work that they're actively engaged in, and they feel like that work is making a difference, that it's not just busy work, but it's work that's fulfilling, that makes them feel connected, that they matter. All of those things are so crucially important because it makes for such a happier and healthier employee. We know that disengaged employees as well end up being sicker than employees that are engaged. You know, it impacts your physical body and your physical health. And disengaged employees take more time off. They have much more absenteeism than employees that are actively engaged in the company. There's a sense of fulfillment and joy that you get when you're working on a team where you feel like your manager cares about you, that they think about you individually and not just the bottom line of the company. So
Mhm.
again, this is one of those really critical things to grab hold of as a leader, to know that I need to make sure that my people are engaged, and not just, taking the surveys and saying, yes, they're engaged or no, they're not, but really doing something about it. Once you find that people are disengaged, you really do need to do something about it.
Yeah, and this is the problem, right? Engagement solutions have been great over the years at pointing out the fact people are disengaged, but they were never great as tools to help drive deep sense of belonging, high levels of engagement across the company. They're a sensor for the most part. And
Right.
leaders have never really understood these human emotional needs that drive a deep sense of belonging, a deep sense of fulfillment, that unlock motivation and drive. And leaders are going to have to learn the human side of business. It is a tool. They need to understand it. They need to know this as well as they know their numbers, as well as they understand the processes, as well as they know the marketplace. Probably more important, because the people who work for them are their assets. These are
Yes.
the assets that must be grown. There's no question that it is long overdue that leaders take the human side of business as seriously as they take everything else. We are still in the overhang of the industrial era. They've treated people as parts for much too long. And although we've come a long way, and you can actually go to places where companies talk about, we need to use more empathy with the employees. It's a skill. You could say it all you want. People have to actually care about the people. Caring is the key. It is a gateway to everything that happens. You've got to sincerely care about them. You got to take an interest in their growth. You got to nurture them, develop them. Leaders are the coaches. They've got to grow their people. I mean, there's just no question about it. Long
Right.
overdue.
Right. And you've got to have that sense of trust. The employee needs to be able to trust the company, but
Mhm.
the company also needs to be able to trust the employee. And when people are disengaged, you start to not care about things, and you really are becoming less trustworthy. The company can't depend on you, and you feel like you can't depend on the company. And that's a very dangerous place to be,
Mhm.
because people just start doing just enough to get by. They'll cut corners, they'll make mistakes, and the company ends up suffering because of it. The company's brand
Mhm.
reputation is on the line when you have employees that are just kind of doing enough to get by. They're not thinking about
Mhm.
excellence and how can I be the best at this. They're just thinking, how can I get this job over with? I'm ready to go home. And that is a dangerous place to be.
Especially when they're working with customers. And, I think,
Yes.
we've really moved beyond engagement in this world to the emotional experience. It's all about creating this incredible emotional experience, which means you've got to be able to create a sense of belonging for your people. That's why it's so important to go listen to this episode that we recorded, this series actually on belonging, because belonging is not an emotion, it's a feeling, and it's a feeling that comes from the collective kind of aggregate impact that everything happening around them is having on their feelings. And eventually you go, wow, I'm not included, maybe I wasn't accepted fully here. I'm not growing, my achievement needs aren't being met. I don't get why this mission is really matters in this company. And you eventually have people who start to check out. They
Yeah.
don't feel they don't belong, and they go on the Gallup the Gallup surveys as actively disengaged.
Right. And you got to remember too that that sense of belonging is from the employee's
Mhm.
perspective. So as a leader, you need to be in tune with how each individual employee is feeling, because you may have some that feel very engaged and they feel like they belong, they're connected to the team, but then there are others that don't.
Mhm.
And you can't just gauge the entire team based on how just a few are feeling. You really do need to get that sense from each and every person on the team. That's why it's so important to have those roundtable discussions where people can be honest and open about how they really feel. And this isn't just, some ooey gooey science, this, some psychology to
Yeah.
say, this stuff doesn't matter. This stuff is serious. It's very critical to your workplace survival, because people are leaving workplaces. They're leaving bosses. essentially,
Yeah.
you get that sense of belonging or disconnect from your manager and from your team. And so you don't want people leaving when in actuality you really do accept them and they should feel like they belong, but for whatever reason they don't. So
Mhm.
you got to make sure that you have your finger on the pulse of what's happening, because people are leaving left and right. They're really leaving because they realize, and the millennials have led us in this way. But I think overall, people are just coming to this awakening that work is not life. Life is outside of work, and that's okay. I think our parents and grandparents really did live to work, and now we work so that we can do all the things that we like to do to live. So there's
Yeah.
really been this big shift in the mindset of people, and millennials have kind of started us down this path. But I think the pandemic added to it and just
Yeah.
exposed us to, I can work and have fun in my, with my family. I can work in the yard. I can play with my kids and really still be a very productive employee. My entire life does not have to revolve around what I do at work.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that companies are being more flexible about hybrid work arrangements, because some people, millennials who share apartment with multiple people, it's may not be a very great workplace. So they may want to spend more time in the office. And that's why, flexible work arrangements and being accommodating has been the way to go for years. Companies were forced to actually do this in a big way, but many companies over the years were offering flexible work arrangements. We started offering them at different companies back in the early 2000s.
Yes,
People can
yes,
work very effectively, but in that era, you didn't have Teams or Zoom or other things where people could video conference. It was not a great experience.
yeah. It
In
was
the
much
middle of
more complicated for
it was,
sure.
yeah, people, you'd be the only one not in the meeting, and somebody'd say, look, I'm going to go to the whiteboard. Let me draw this out. And of course, you'd be sitting there and you'd be on this conference call, right? And
Right.
you had no idea what was going on. People forgot about you. So the remote work environment is just so much better. And all these people realize, wait a minute, I'm as productive and probably more productive working from home. So I should have some flexibility here.
Yeah. I know I've always been much more productive at home than
Mhm.
I am when I'm going into the office, just because I end up starting earlier because I don't have to get up and get dressed and put on makeup and all of that jazz.
Mhm.
I can just, go to work, wake up and go to work. And then at the end of the day, I'm more likely to work a little bit longer because I'm already at home and I don't have to commute back home. I don't have to, rush to go do any errands. I have flexibility throughout the day to go run errands. So it just makes such a big, big change in your entire workplace when you give people that flexibility. And I think it increases people's joy, which is extremely important when you have people that are happy as individuals. They're happy with themselves, they're happy with their life. They bring that joy and that contentment into the
Mhm.
workplace. And you want that upbeat attitude in your people. You don't want them bogged down with, problem solving. And that's all they ever have to do is
Yep.
figure out how they're going to get all the things done that they need to get done at work. And then how are they going to balance out the things that they need to get done at home? When you make that a little bit easier for them and don't make them choose between work and my children,
Mhm.
because work is going to lose every time.
Yeah.
So don't make people make that choice. Don't put them in that position. Make it a
Yeah.
little bit more flexible and a whole lot easier for them to be human.
Yeah. And listen, things you got to do immediately. Number one, you got to trust the people. Trust is everything. Without
Yeah,
trust, you have nothing. You've got to trust them to be accountable. And obviously, when they're not accountable, you've got to deal with it directly, because
right.
that's unacceptable. But number one, so it's accountability without micromanagement.
Mhm.
Let them choose the type of work arrangement that they want, unless it's absolutely required that they're in the office because they're in a lab or something. There are a lot of reasons people have to come in. There's assembly lines and factories. There's all sorts of different work
Right.
environments. But when you can be flexible, give people the choice. Care about them. Make sure you get to know the whole individual, right? Treat them as a human, learn about their needs and desires, make sure that you're working with them and coaching them, trying to get those fulfilled. Make sure that you create a workplace where people are vulnerable. and free to speak up, and they feel comfortable voicing what's on their mind. If you don't have an environment where your folks feel comfortable coming to you when they have a concern, if you're not asking if they have concerns, you're going to get caught by surprise. And make
Yeah.
sure you watch this episode on belonging. It's a good series. I don't know how, maybe 8 episodes or something, Terry. I don't remember the exact number, but it goes through the things you should be doing. You should listen to that. Don't be a victim of the Great Resignation as a company. This is avoidable. You're always going to lose some people, but you don't have to actually have the turnover other people have. You should be taking the best people from other places, quite honestly. You should be
Right.
the employer of choice.
Yes, absolutely.
Parting thoughts, Tara?
So you bring up a great point. Like, we don't want people to end up feeling like they've got to participate in the Great Resignation, because it's very expensive to replace a person. It's expensive to keep a person
Excellent.
on staff that's disengaged. So that's an expense. And then you incur the expense of having to replace that person.
Mhm.
You've got to bring in someone new and take the time to train them, give them the tools and all the things they need to be able to do their job. So it's a very high cost associated with that when you start calculating how much it costs to replace associates and how much it costs to keep those around that aren't performing. The numbers just start to build up. So take the time and sow into your employees, build something that's great and put some effort into it, and you'll get the rewards long term for years to come.
Yeah, people are assets that must be grown. Make sure that your assets are putting roots down in the soil of your company. So listen,
Yes.
we'll see you next time. Thanks absolutely so
Yes.
much for joining us. Hey, don't forget to smack the bell and subscribe. We look
Yes.
forward to having you. We're on live every Wednesday at 4 o'clock Eastern. You can get us on the People Productive channel. You see it right there, ready to launch. Come on in, make some comments, join us. It's a fun time. Take
Yes.
care.
Bye for now.